Alright, we're halfway through the entire Godzilla series, and now it's time to talk about the movie that introduced Godzilla's second archenemy. Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla came out in 1974, is the last Godzilla film to be directed by Jun Fukuda, and the last Godzilla film to be scored by Masato Sato. The plot of the movie revolves around a prophecy in which a giant monster will emerge from the mountains and destroy all of Japan and soon the entire world. How is that different from any other day in this series? But the prophecy also says that two monsters will team up together to fight off this giant monster and save the world. So the evil monster that was predicted happens to be Godzilla, and the entire world is shocked by this. And then Godzilla gets in a scuffle with Anguirus, and that's when things start to really get a little suspicious. Why would Anguirus fight Godzilla if these two are considered friends now? Well, during the fight, Anguirus manages to chip a piece off of Godzilla's skin, revealing that there's metal right underneath it. So things get even more suspicious because of that, and the fight results in Anguirus losing and retreating, and then Godzilla, or at least the world thinks that, is making his way towards a power plant where suddenly another Godzilla pops up. But this second Godzilla is revealed to be the real Godzilla, while the Godzilla that appeared in the mountains just happened to be a doppelganger that's controlled by aliens from the third planet of the black hole. And they've named this creation Mechagodzilla. Basically just robot Godzilla. So the two monsters have a brief fight, and then by the time of their second fight, they're joined in by a third monster named King Caesar, who was part of this Okinawan Prophecy. So Godzilla and King Caesar team up to fight against Mechagodzilla and save the world. At this point in the Godzilla series, it was definitely geared towards a younger audience, and this and the next one to follow would probably be the most adult of the 70s Godzilla movies, meaning that they were trying to gear towards more of a wider crowd rather than just targeting kids, which All Monsters Attack, Godzilla vs. Hedorah, and Godzilla vs. Megalon definitely did. And this ends up being probably one of the most important Godzilla movies because it introduces Mechagodzilla. I mentioned how King Ghidorah is Godzilla's archenemy. You really can't think about King Ghidorah without thinking about Godzilla. He's pretty much the equivalent of Green Goblin to Spider-Man. They're both archenemies. Mechagodzilla to Godzilla is pretty much what Venom is to Spider-Man, in which Mechagodzilla's creation solely depends on Godzilla, and they're both alike, and Mechagodzilla is just one of the coolest monsters ever. There are 5 monsters that Toho considers to be their all-stars: Godzilla, Mothra, King Ghidorah, Mechagodzilla, and Rodan. Mechagodzilla was the very last one to come up, but hey, you can't go wrong with a robot Godzilla. He's come in many different variations as the series goes on, but this original Mechagodzilla is just pure classic all around. He's an alien war machine with finger missiles, laser eyes, lightning from his chest, knee missiles, toe missiles, missiles that come out of his mouth, he can fly. He's got all kinds of powers. It's incredibly cheesy, but it's pretty cool considering that this is pretty much an alien weapon. And Mechagodzilla definitely shows to be a worthy competitor to Godzilla, managing to fend off against 2 monsters at the same time. And if you thought Godzilla bled a lot in Godzilla vs. Gigan, Godzilla is pretty much soaked in blood by this movie. Mechagodzilla just annihilates Godzilla and almost damn near kills him if it wasn't for some Deus Ex Machina ending to defeat Mechagodzilla. I'll touch on that a little later. But yeah, Mechagodzilla is cool, and what I love about all the fight scenes in this movie is that there's no stock footage. Mechagodzilla and King Caesar are completely new designs, so that means they don't have any stock footage to work off of. And even with Godzilla and Anguirus, you really can't use stock footage of them fighting from Godzilla raids again because that movie was made 19 years prior, so it would have just been all that more obvious. The Godzilla series at this point may have been guilty of using a lot of stock footage, but at least they don't go down the same path as the Gamera series does, where some of those movies pretty much take stock footage from the original Gamera, despite the fact that that first movie was black and white. But anyway, it's a fun movie. The monster scenes are incredibly fun and very tame by comparison of the last few movies that we got. One other element that I really like about this film is Masato Sato's score. In terms of his Godzilla scores, it's tied with Ebirah Horror of the Deep as my favorite from his, because this time around it has more of a jazz feeling to it, which is Strange, but hey, it's a pretty memorable Godzilla score. Like, you hear hints of jazz music when Mechagodzilla is fighting Anguirus, and then during the big final battle at the end. Now, when I did my top 10 list of favorite Godzilla movies, excluding the 1954 one, this movie ended up on that list. However, with my original reviews from 5 years ago and this list, I was basing off what I was saying off of my memories of watching these movies. Watching Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla for this review and with an adult mindset really shows that this movie doesn't quite hold up, and it's just no longer one of the 10 best for me. While not a bad movie, it's definitely not spectacular. One of the big issues I had with the movie is the Okinawan Prophecy. This woman from Okinawa basically has a panic attack as she foresees into the future that a giant monster will rampage across the world, and given that this is the 14th Godzilla movie, why would anybody be shocked at this point? It's like, yeah, that's an everyday occurrence here in Japan. This is nothing new. And then if the prophecy is really talking about Mechagodzilla, that's one hell of a coincidence that aliens just decide to take over the world, as this one woman in Okinawa predicts a prophecy to occur where a monster will destroy the world. It's just stupid. I know a lot of events in movies are based on coincidence, otherwise you wouldn't get from one thing to the next, but this is just an ongoing series of coincidences where you're like, oh, come on, really? Another issue I had is with the human elements. I've gone on record in saying that a lot of the human characters in Jun Fukuda's films are just not that interesting compared to Honda's, and my opinion on that has definitely not changed with this movie. After Mechagodzilla reveals his true form and he and Godzilla fight to a stalemate, there's a lot of nothing happening. There's mostly exposition. All the human scenes are just downright boring, and sometimes they have very bizarre action scenes in them where it's like hand-to-hand combat, and every time we get in one of these sequences, the camera can never stay still. It's like someone's like rocking back and forth on a boat. It's distracting. I mean, granted, there is one sequence in the movie that does take place on a cruise ship as the main characters head from mainland Japan to Okinawa, but there are even some fight scenes that don't take place on a boat where the camera's just rocking back and forth, and you're like, stop it! Hold the camera still for 1 second, please! So before I wrap things up, you're wondering, what's this Deus Ex Machina thing with Godzilla that you mentioned earlier? Well, after Godzilla and Mechagodzilla fight each other for the first time, there's a brief moment where Godzilla is shown on Monster Island getting struck by lightning repeatedly, and he starts to glow because of all the lightning strikes. Well, later on, Godzilla eventually uses this hidden power to become a magnet and pull Mechagodzilla towards him so that he and King Caesar can have an easy advantage to destroy him. And it really comes out of nowhere. I mean, they do set it up before the final battle, but I've never once throughout the past movies see Godzilla turn himself into a magnet. But then again, I've never seen Godzilla fly before, and I've never seen Godzilla do whatever the fuck that is. So I guess me complaining about him turning himself into a magnet is downright stupid. Now, you noticed I haven't been talking a lot about the other monster in this movie, King Caesar, and honestly, there's not much to say about King Caesar. He's pretty much a lion god, and yeah, there's not much to him. He's a cool monster, and I like him, but he's not really one of the top-tier Godzilla characters, and he would only appear in one other movie after this, so yeah, people like him, he's just not one of the most memorable monsters. So Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla, just to cut to the chase right here, is a good movie. It's not one of the greats, though. It did introduce the world to Mechagodzilla, who'd be one of the most popular Godzilla enemies out there. All of the special effects sequences are great. They're very cheesy, but you can appreciate them because they don't use stock footage at all. But the human characters are very dull, and the movie really lags in the middle after Godzilla and Mechagodzilla's first fight. But once Mechagodzilla is reactivated and he takes on both Godzilla and King Caesar, then the movie really picks up and it's entertaining as hell. So the last act of the movie, the big final battle at the end, is what you really want to watch. All the other monster scenes are good as well, but the human scenes are just skip them. And that's my review for Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla. Tomorrow we're going to be taking a look at the final film in the original Showa Godzilla series, Terror of Mechagodzilla. So until tomorrow, I hope you enjoyed this review. Leave a comment down below and tell me what your thoughts are on the movie, if and when you've seen it. And as always, this is the real Mr. Robinson telling you there's only one.